I did not sleep after Sorren left the bridge yesterday. I lay awake instead, cataloging the specific, reckless want of sitting that close to her, of nearly closing the last handful of inches, and telling myself, the way I tell myself most things these days, that wanting something doesn't obligate you to reach for it. My grandmother taught me that lesson the hard way, watching 3 tethers fail across the wider archipelago and watching what false hope did to the people who couldn't let themselves accept an ending in time to grieve it properly. I have built my whole adult life around not being one of those people. Elder and training work is mostly this, sitting with people while they say the thing they're afraid to say out loud. I spent the morning with the Hollis family, whose youngest hasn't slept properly since she overheard her parents discussing, if the tether goes. I don't lie to children. I told her the truth in pieces small enough to hold, that the tether is old and tired, that the grown-ups are doing everything they know how to do, that whatever happens, she will not be alone in it. Joe, she asked if Sorren's side was doing the same work. I said yes. I did not say that I had spent most of that morning thinking about Sorren's shoulder against mine, instead of the Hollis family's grief, and that the guilt of that sat oddly close to the wanting itself. My grandmother caught me at it after. The particular stillness I get when I'm turning something over. I haven't decided to say aloud yet. You've got Vale's girl on your mind, she said, not a question, setting down her tea with the calm precision she's applied to every hard thing in her life. Careful with that, Callan. Not because she isn't worth it. Because grief and wanting look almost identical from the inside, and I'd hate to watch you confuse one for the other and hurt you both finding out which it was. I saw Sorren again before Aaron at the midday tending. We don't always meet twice in a day, but the wind was wrong for the morning check, and we'd agreed to try again once it settled. She was already at the bridge's center when I arrived, sleeves pushed to her elbows, sun-bronzed and steady in the particular way she is when she thinks no one's watching her work. And I stood at my end a moment longer than I needed to, just to watch her, before she noticed me. You're staring, she said without turning around, a smile audible in her voice. Whoa! I'm assessing, I said, which was true and also a lie, since what I was actually doing was cataloging, uselessly, the exact color the light turned her hair at that hour. We didn't talk about yesterday. We didn't need to. It sat between us the whole hour, warm and unresolved, in every careful inch of space we kept, and every glance that lasted a half-second, too long to be about tending work at all. I was still turning her words over when the afternoon ferry came in low over the western landing, later than its usual hour, and riding lower in the water than a supply run should. I went down to the dock more out of habit than alarm, and I did not expect, of every passenger who could have stepped off that ferry, to see my brother. Aaron looks older than the 6 years since I last saw him should account for. Leaner, sun, weathered in a way that speaks of a lot of ground covered and not much of it comfortable, a rangy build built for travel rather than tending, a faint scar through one eyebrow that wasn't there the last time I stood this close to him. He set his pack down at his feet with the particular ease of a man who has learned to travel light because staying anywhere too long has stopped being an option.
Little brother,
He said, and smiled, the smile I remember best and trust least.
You gotten taller. Unforgivable, honestly.
I have not seen Aaron since the season he left. The scandal that sent him out was never fully explained to me, only that our father's face went the color of old ash whenever his name came up afterward, and that Aaron himself never once wrote to tell his side of it. I have spent 6 years assuming I would never have to decide how to feel about him again. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Plain, because plain is the only register I trust myself in around him."
I heard your tether's dying.
He said, easy, like it was the most natural thing in the world to say to a brother he abandoned without explanation.
Thought you could use an extra pair of hands. Or company. Or both.
He said it lightly, but something underneath it didn't match the lightness. A carefulness in his eyes that made me wonder, not for the first time in 30 seconds, whether Aaron had ever once in his life told me the whole truth about why he was somewhere. I walked him up to the council house myself, rather than let him wander loose with questions I wasn't ready to answer, and he studied the island the whole way with an attention that felt less like homesickness and more like assessment. The state of the garden terraces, the visible wear on the bridge cables, the general mood of people who know their home is dying slowly and are trying to die well instead of badly.
It's worse than I expected.
He said, quiet, and for one unguarded second, the practiced ease dropped entirely off his face, and I saw something that looked almost like real grief. I told my grandmother about Aaron that evening, sitting in her small, warm kitchen with 2 untouched cups of tea going cold between us. She took the news, the way she takes most hard things, quietly, turning it over with real care before she spoke. "Your brother left a lot of unanswered questions behind him," she said. I don't fault you for wanting to trust him. I'd only ask you to notice, over these next weeks, whether the version of him standing in front of you matches the reasons he gives for being here, or whether the reasons keep shifting to fit whatever he needs you to believe that day. It was, I recognized even as she said it, exactly the kind of clear-eyed caution she'd have wanted from me about Sorren, too, except with Sorren for the first time in longer than I could remember. I found I didn't want caution nearly as much as I wanted the 2-inch closeness she'd offered me on the bridge.
Let me help.
He said again, at the council house door, and this time there was no performance in it at all.
I know. I don't get to just walk back in and be trusted. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a task. Anything. I'd like to be useful to you, Callan, even if I've lost the right to be anything else to you.
I stood there a long moment, my grandmother's warning about grief and wanting looking alike still sitting uncomfortably close in my chest, except now it wasn't Sorren I was turning it over about. "There's a supply inventory that needs doing," I told him finally, watching his face carefully for the flicker of relief he tried and failed to hide. "Start there. We'll talk about the rest of it later." He nodded, picked his pack back up, and as he turned to go, I caught, just for a half-second, an expression cross his face that had nothing to do with homecoming at all, something closer to a man checking whether a plan was still on schedule. I told myself I'd imagined it. I did not entirely believe myself. I lay awake a second night in a row, except this time it wasn't only Sorren's shoulder against mine that kept me turning in the dark. It was my brother's face at the exact moment he thought no one was reading it. That flicker of something checked and measured rather than felt, set against my grandmother's careful warning about grief and wanting looking identical from the inside. I did not know yet which one Aaron's return actually was. I only knew, lying there listening to the wind work at the shutters, that I intended to find out before I let myself trust him, the way some small, homesick part of me already wanted to. Part 2. Tomorrow.